The space around the Vega system had been quiet for over 300 years. Trading ships moved slowly between the outer planets, carrying goods and passengers in the same boring routine that had existed since the Galactic Council first mapped this region. Nothing exciting ever happened here, which made it perfect for what was about to unfold. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Titan, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the main viewing screen. He had been in space for 12 years, but he still felt amazed every time they made a jump between star systems. The hyperspace tunnel looked like a river of liquid light, flowing and changing as their massive ship moved through it at speeds that would have been impossible just 50 years ago. 30 seconds to normal space, called out Lisa Campbell from the navigation station. Her voice was calm and professional, but Jake could hear the slight tension underneath. This was not just any normal jump. This was the moment that would change everything for humanity. The Titan was unlike any ship that had ever been built. At 1 kilometer long and 300 meters wide, it was a giant metal beast that carried enough firepower to level a small moon. Its hull was made from a new metal that Earth scientists had discovered in the asteroid belt, something so strong that conventional weapons would bounce off it like toys. The ship's weapons were based on old ideas made new again. Kinetic cannons that could fire metal projectiles at speeds that would make them more destructive than nuclear bombs. Captain Richard Hayes walked onto the bridge from his ready room, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. He was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion 20 years ago, and before that in the Europa mining conflicts. Now he was about to lead humanity into its first real contact with the galaxy's major powers. "Status report, Commander Morrison," Hayes said, taking his position in the captain's chair. "All systems are running perfectly, Captain. The jump drive is working better than expected." "We should arrive exactly where we planned," Jake replied, checking his instruments one more time. The bridge crew had been training for this mission for 2 years. Every person on the ship knew their job perfectly, and they all understood what was at stake. Earth had been trying to join the Galactic Council for over 50 years, but the other species kept saying that humans were too primitive, too violent, too young. They treated humanity like children who needed to stay home and play with toys, while the adults handled the real business of the galaxy. "Exit in 10 seconds, Lisa announced. The swirling colors of hyperspace began to fade, and suddenly they were back in normal space. The viewing screen showed the familiar sight of stars, but these were not the stars that could be seen from Earth. They were 12 light years from home, farther than any human had ever traveled before. "Navigation, confirm our position," Hayes ordered. Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her control panel, checking their location against the star charts. "Confirmed, Captain. We are at the edge of the Vega system, exactly where we plan to be." "Tony." Rodriguez looked up from his sensor station with excitement in his voice. "Captain, I'm reading multiple contacts on long-range sensors. Looks like we have company." Hayes had expected this. The Galactic Council had monitoring stations throughout this region of space, and their arrival would not go unnoticed. The question was, which species would be the first to come and investigate? "What kind of ships, Rodriguez?" "I count 12 vessels, Captain. The computer identifies them as Xanthari design. 3 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, and 3 support ships." Hayes felt a cold smile cross his face. The Xanthari were perfect for what he had in mind. They were one of the galaxy's most aggressive species, known for attacking first and asking questions later. They had a reputation for being bullies who picked on smaller, weaker civilizations. Most importantly, they had never faced anything like the Titan before. "Distance?" Hayes asked. "Approximately 200,000 kilometers and closing fast," Rodriguez replied. The Xanthari ships were beautiful in their own way, with smooth curves and organic shapes that looked almost alive. Their technology was based on biological principles, with ships that could heal themselves and weapons that fired concentrated plasma. They had been one of the founding members of the Galactic Council, and they considered themselves to be the galaxy's premier military force. Amy Parker looked up from the communications station. "Captain, we're being hailed by the lead Xanthari vessel." "Put them through," Hayes commanded. The main screen flickered and then showed the face of a Xanthari officer. The alien looked like a cross between a lizard and a dragon, with scales that shifted color depending on his mood. His eyes were large and yellow, and his mouth was filled with sharp teeth. "Unknown vessel, you are in violation of Xanthari territorial space. Identify yourself immediately or face the consequences." Hayes stepped forward, making sure the alien could see him clearly. "I am Captain Richard Hayes of the United Earthship. Titan, we are here on a diplomatic mission to establish formal relations with the Galactic Council." The Xanthari officer's scales shifted to a darker color, which Jake knew meant anger or aggression. "Humans, I have heard of your species. Weak mammals from a primitive world. You should have stayed in your own system where you belong, perhaps," Hayes replied calmly. "But we're here now, and we're not leaving until we've completed our mission." The alien's laugh was a harsh, grating sound that made everyone on the bridge uncomfortable. "Your vessel is outnumbered 12 to 1. Surrender now, and we may allow some of your crew to live as slaves?" Hayes turned to his tactical officer. "Lieutenant Commander Steve Collins, are weapon systems ready?" "All systems armed and ready, Captain. Targeting solutions locked on all hostile vessels." Steve Collins had been the Titan's tactical officer since the ship was first launched. He was a quiet man who rarely spoke unless asked a direct question, but he knew the ship's weapons better than anyone else alive. The Titan's main guns were his responsibility, and he had spent months making sure they would work perfectly when the time came. Hayes looked back at the screen. "Admiral, I'm going to give you one chance to withdraw. We have no quarrel with you, but we will defend ourselves if necessary." The Xanthari officer's response was to cut the transmission and immediately signal his fleet to move into attack formation. Red. "Alert," Hayes announced calmly. "All hands to battle stations." This is not a drill. Throughout the ship, alarm bells began to ring as the crew prepared for humanity's first real space battle. The Xanthari fleet moved through space like a pack of hunting animals. Admiral Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Searing Fang, watching the unknown human vessel on his main display. The ship was massive, bigger than most space stations, with a design that looked crude and primitive compared to the elegant curves of Xanthari bioships. Its hull was covered in ugly angles and what appeared to be ancient projectile weapons, the kind of technology that civilized species had abandoned thousands of years ago. "Communications, send a message to High Command," Zethkar ordered his crew. "Tell them we have encountered a human vessel of unknown design. We are moving to investigate and will capture or destroy it as necessary." The Admiral had been fighting in space for over 40 years, and he had never seen anything like this human ship. It was so large that it seemed impossible for something that size to move through hyperspace. Yet here it was, sitting calmly in space as if it owned the entire system. The humans were supposed to be a weak species, barely capable of space travel, but this vessel suggested otherwise. Back on the Titan, the crew was moving quickly to prepare for battle. Jake Morrison watched the tactical display as the Xanthari ship spread out into attack formation. Their movements were smooth and coordinated, showing the kind of experience that came from years of combat. The alien ships were smaller than the Titan, but they were fast and heavily armed. "Captain, the Xanthari are moving to surround us," Steve Collins reported from his tactical station. "They're trying to get firing positions on all sides." Hayes nodded calmly. "Let them come." "Rodriguez, what are our sensor readings on their ships?" Tony Rodriguez studied his instruments carefully. "The 3 cruisers are approximately 600 meters long, Captain. They're showing energy signatures consistent with plasma weapons and quantum torpedoes. The destroyers are smaller but faster, probably designed for hit-and-run attacks." Amy Parker looked up from communications. "Captain, I'm monitoring Xanthari transmissions. They're coordinating their attack pattern and discussing the best way to disable our engines." The Xanthari had fought dozens of species over the centuries, and they had developed tactics that worked against every type of ship they had encountered. Their bioships could regenerate damage. Their weapons could penetrate most types of armor, and their speed allowed them to outmaneuver larger vessels. They had never lost a battle when they had numerical superiority. Distance to the nearest ship? Hayes asked. 50,000 kilometers in closing, Collins replied. They'll be in weapons range in approximately 3 minutes. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Paul Johnson was making final checks on the ship's power systems. The Titan's engines were unlike anything that had ever been built before, using a combination of fusion reactors and antimatter containment that could provide enough power to run a small city. The ship's shields were powered by the same system, creating an energy barrier that could deflect most known weapons. "Bridge, this is engineering," Johnson spoke into his communicator. "All power systems are running at full capacity. Shield generators are online and ready." The shields were humanity's greatest defensive achievement. Unlike the energy screens used by most galactic civilizations, human shields worked by creating a field that could absorb and redirect incoming energy. The technology was based on principles that other species considered impossible, but human scientists had made it work through years of experimentation. On the Xanthari flagship, Admiral Zethkar was growing impatient. "Weapons charge all plasma. Cannons target their engine section. I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. The humans will make good slaves once we break their spirit." The Xanthari had enslaved dozens of species over the centuries, and they had developed efficient methods for breaking the will of their captives. Humans were mammals, which meant they would be easier to control than some of the more aggressive species the Xanthari had encountered. The Admiral was already planning how he would display his human prisoners to the Galactic Council. "Sir, all weapons are charged and ready," his tactical officer reported. "We have target locks on their primary systems." "Begin the attack," Zethkar ordered. The Xanthari ships opened fire simultaneously, sending streams of superheated plasma across space toward the Titan. The plasma bolts were beautiful and deadly, glowing like miniature suns as they raced toward their target. Each bolt carried enough energy to vaporize a mountain, and the combined firepower of 12 ships would have been enough to destroy most planetary defense systems on the Titan's bridge. Everyone watched as the plasma bolts struck their shields. The energy barriers flared with brilliant light as they absorbed the incoming fire, but they held firm. The ship barely shuddered from the impact. "Shields holding at 97%, Johnson reported from engineering. "No damage to any systems." The Xanthari stared in disbelief at their sensor readings. Their most powerful weapons had struck the human ship directly, and it showed no signs of damage. The energy signatures from the human shields were unlike anything in their databases. "Impossible," Zethkar muttered. "Fire again. All ships, concentrate. Fire on the same target point." The second wave of plasma bolts struck the Titan's shields in the exact same location, trying to overwhelm the defensive systems through concentrated firepower. The shields flared even brighter this time, but again they held without failing. "Shields at 94%, Johnson reported. "Still no damage?" Hayes turned to his tactical officer. "Collins, you may fire when ready." Steve Collins had been waiting for this moment for months. His fingers moved over his control panel with practiced precision, selecting targets and calculating firing solutions. The Titan's main guns were unlike any weapon that had ever been built. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, they fired solid projectiles made of depleted uranium and tungsten, accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic fields. "Targeting the lead cruiser," Collins announced. "Firing main battery." The Titan's forward gun spoke for the first time in anger. 3 massive projectiles launched from the ship's hull, each one weighing several tons and traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. There was no flash or explosion. Just 3 streaks of metal racing across space faster than the eye could follow. The projectiles struck the Xanthari flagship in less than a second. The kinetic energy of the impact was beyond anything the aliens had ever experienced. Their bio-armor, designed to deflect energy weapons, offered no protection against the raw physical force of the human weapons. The searing fang broke apart like a toy, its hull cracking and splitting as the projectiles tore through it. Admiral Zethkar had just enough time to realize what was happening before his ship exploded in a brilliant fireball. The remaining Xanthari ships stopped their attack, stunned by the destruction of their flagship. In one salvo, the humans had destroyed the most powerful ship in their fleet. "Sir, what are your orders?" Jake Morrison asked quietly. Hayes looked at the tactical display, where 11 Xanthari ships were now hesitating in their attack. "Signal the remaining ships, Commander. Offer them one final chance to withdraw." The silence in space was broken only by the crackling of burning debris from the destroyed Xanthari flagship. The remaining 11 ships of the alien fleet had stopped their attack and were now floating motionless, their crews trying to understand what had just happened. The Searing Fang had been the pride of the Xanthari Navy, equipped with the most advanced weapons and armor in their fleet. Yet it had been destroyed by a single salvo from the human ship. Commander Vextar, now the senior officer of the Xanthari fleet, stared at his tactical display in complete shock. The readings made no sense according to everything he had learned about space warfare. The human ship had fired solid projectiles, not energy beams or plasma bolts, and those primitive weapons had cut through their flagship like it was made of paper. "Communications, open a channel to the human vessel," Vextar ordered. His voice shaking slightly. On the Titan's bridge, Amy Parker looked up from her station. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from one of the remaining Xanthari ships." Hayes nodded calmly. "Put it through." The main screen showed the face of Commander Vextar, whose scales had turned a pale yellow color that indicated fear among his species. "Human Captain, I am Commander Vextar of the Xanthari 2nd Battle Group. We request an immediate ceasefire." "I'm listening," Hayes replied simply. "Your weapons are not in our databases. Our sensors cannot understand how solid projectiles could cause such destruction. We wish to negotiate." Hayes looked at his tactical officer. "Collins, how long would it take to destroy the remaining ships?" Steve Collins checked his instruments. "Approximately 45 seconds, Captain. We have targeting solutions locked on all vessels." The Xanthari commander's eyes widened as he heard this exchange. 45 seconds to destroy 11 warships was faster than most civilizations could destroy a single small fighter craft. "Commander Vextar," Hayes said, turning back to the screen, "I offered your admiral a chance to withdraw peacefully. He chose to attack instead. Now I'm offering you the same choice. Leave this system immediately or face the same fate as your flagship." Vextar's mind raced as he considered his options. He had never faced an enemy like this before. The human ship was massive and slow, but its weapons were devastatingly effective. His remaining ships were fast and maneuverable, but their weapons had proven useless against the human shields. "Human Captain, we cannot simply withdraw. Our orders are to investigate and neutralize any threats to Xanthari space. If we return without completing our mission, we will be executed for cowardice." Hayes felt a moment of sympathy for the alien commander. Military discipline was something he understood, regardless of which species practiced it. "Then perhaps we can find another solution." Jake Morrison watched the exchange with interest. The captain was giving the aliens a way out, but he was also making it clear that humanity would not be intimidated by threats. "What do you propose?" Vextar asked. "Your mission was to investigate a potential threat. You have done that. Return to your superiors and tell them that humanity is prepared to defend itself, but we have no intention of attacking anyone who leaves us alone." The Xanthari commander considered this carefully. It was technically true that they had investigated the human ship, and they had certainly determined that it was a threat. Perhaps that would be enough to satisfy his orders. "Very well," Vextar said finally. "But this is not over. The Xanthari Empire will not forget what happened here today." "Neither will we," Hayes replied. The transmission ended, and the Xanthari ships began to move away from the Titan. Their formation was loose and disorganized, showing the confusion and fear that had taken hold of their crews. Within minutes, they had jumped to hyperspace and disappeared. "Well, that was interesting," Jake Morrison commented. Hayes turned to his communications officer. Parker, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them that we have made first contact with the Zenthari Empire and successfully defended ourselves against their attack. Amy Parker began composing the message, knowing that it would cause a sensation back on Earth. Humanity had just proven that it could stand up to one of the galaxy's major powers. Captain, we're receiving multiple transmissions from various sources, Rodriguez reported from his sensor station. It looks like word of our engagement is spreading quickly. This was not unexpected. Space battles were rare in this region of the galaxy, and the destruction of a Zenthari flagship would be big news. Every monitoring station and merchant ship in the area would be sending reports to their home governments. What kind of transmissions? Hayes asked. Military communications from at least 6 different species. Trade messages from the Merchant Guild, and what appears to be a priority message from the Galactic Council itself. The Galactic Council was the closest thing the galaxy had to a unified government. It was made up of representatives from the most powerful civilizations, and it made decisions that affected billions of beings across thousands of worlds. The fact that they were already sending messages meant that humanity had definitely gotten their attention. Put the council message through, Hayes ordered. The screen showed a being that looked like a cross between a bird and a reptile, with bright blue feathers and intelligent golden eyes. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Aquilian Union speaking. For the Galactic Council. We have received reports of a hostile encounter between your vessel and Zenthari forces. We request that you proceed immediately to Council Station for debriefing and negotiation. Hayes smiled slightly. After 50 years of being ignored by the Council, humanity was finally being invited to the table. Ambassador Veltar, we would be honored to meet with the Council. However, we came here on a diplomatic mission, not as conquerors. We defended ourselves only when attacked. We understand your position, Captain. The Council is prepared to discuss formal recognition of your species and possible membership in our organization. Will you accept our invitation? We will, Ambassador. Please send us the coordinates and any protocols we need to follow. The transmission ended, and Hayes looked around at his crew. They had done something that would change the course of human history. In a single day, they had gone from being dismissed as primitives to being invited to join the most powerful organization in the galaxy. Rodriguez, plot a course for Council Station. Best speed. Course plotted and laid in, Captain. Collins, secure all weapon systems. We're going to be meeting with diplomats, not warriors. Steve Collins began the process of powering down the Titan's massive guns. The weapons had spoken once, and that had been enough to change everything. Engineering, this is the bridge. Prepare for jump to hyperspace. Paul Johnson's voice came back immediately. Ready when you are, Captain. Hayes settled back in his command chair and looked at the stars on the main screen. Somewhere out there, the Zenthari fleet was racing back to their homeworlds with news of humanity's power. Other species would be analyzing the battle and trying to understand how humans had achieved such devastating effectiveness with seemingly primitive weapons. Engage, Hayes ordered. The Titan jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the debris of the Zenthari flagship and carrying with it the hopes and fears of an entire species. The galaxy would never be the same again. News of the battle between the Titan and the Zenthari fleet spread across the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. Within hours, every major civilization knew that a single human ship had destroyed one of the most powerful vessels in the Zenthari Navy and forced the rest of their fleet to retreat. The implications of this event were staggering, and governments throughout known space were scrambling to understand what it meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. On the hegemony home world of Kithura, High Counselor Thexmore sat in his private chambers, studying the tactical reports that his intelligence officers had gathered. The hegemony was an alliance of insect-like species that controlled nearly a quarter of the galaxy, and they had always considered the Zenthari to be their primary military rivals. The fact that humans had defeated Zenthari forces so easily was both encouraging and terrifying. Bring me General Zixcar, Thexmore ordered his aide. General Zixcar was the supreme commander of hegemony forces, a massive being whose exoskeleton was covered in battle scars from dozens of campaigns. When he arrived in the counselor's chambers, his mandibles were clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. "You have read the reports?" Vexmore asked. "I have, High Counselor." The humans used kinetic weapons, projectiles fired at tremendous velocity. Our own armor would be just as vulnerable to such attacks as Zenthari biohull. This was the terrifying truth that every military commander in the galaxy was beginning to realize. For thousands of years, space warfare had been dominated by energy weapons and defensive systems designed to counter them. The humans had gone back to the most basic principle of warfare and made it devastatingly effective through superior technology. Meanwhile, on the crystal world of Nexus Prime, the Crystalline Collective was holding an emergency session of their governing council. The Collective was a peaceful civilization that specialized in scientific research and technological development. They had no military to speak of, relying instead on defensive systems and diplomatic immunity to protect themselves. The human vessel displayed shield technology that we cannot explain, announced Research Director Lumara, her crystalline body pulsing with different colors as she spoke. "Our sensors indicate that their defensive screens operate on principles that violate several laws of physics as we understand them." The collective scientists were some of the most advanced in the galaxy, and the fact that they could not understand human technology was deeply disturbing to them. If humans could develop shields that were immune to conventional weapons, what other impossible technologies might they possess? On the trading station of Merchant's Rest, Captain Dana Murphy of the Earth cargo ship Golden Eagle was having the strangest day of her life. She had been conducting routine business with various alien traders when news of the Titan's battle had arrived. Suddenly, every alien on the station wanted to talk to her, to learn more about human capabilities and intentions. "Captain Murphy," said Trader Velkoth, a slug-like being who controlled much of the spice trade in this sector, "my government is very interested in establishing formal trade relations with your people. We have many products that humans might find useful." Dana had been trading with aliens for 5 years, and in all that time, most of them had barely acknowledged that humans existed. Now they were treating her like she represented a major galactic power, which in a way she supposed she did. "I'll be happy to pass your message along to Earth's Trade Commission," Dana replied carefully. "Though I should mention that I'm just a cargo hauler, not a diplomat." The truth was that Earth's merchant fleet was tiny compared to those of the major galactic powers. Humans had only a few dozen trading ships, and most of them stayed close to Earth's solar system. But now it seemed like that might change very quickly on Council Station. The emergency session had been going on for 6 hours. Representatives from over 50 species had gathered to discuss the human situation, and opinions were divided. Some wanted to immediately invite humanity to join the Council as a full member, while others argued that the humans were too dangerous to be trusted. Ambassador Veltar of the Aquilian Union stood to address the assembly. The Aquilians were known for their diplomatic skills and their ability to find peaceful solutions to complex problems. "Fellow councilors, we face a choice that will shape the future of our galaxy. We can welcome humanity as equals and benefit from their unique perspectives, or we can treat them as a threat and potentially create a dangerous enemy." High Counselor Thexmore of the Hegemony rose to respond. His massive insectoid form towered over the other representatives, and his voice carried the authority of someone who commanded billions of soldiers. "The humans have shown that they are capable of great violence. How do we know they will not use their weapons against us once they have gained our trust?" "Because," Veltar replied, "they had every opportunity to destroy the entire Zenthari fleet, but they chose to offer mercy instead. This suggests that they are not conquerors but potential allies." The debate continued for hours, with various species voicing their concerns and opinions. The ethereal communion, beings of pure energy who rarely involve themselves in physical matters, spoke of sensing great potential in humanity. The Void Seekers, a nomadic warrior race, expressed interest in testing themselves against human military might. The Silicon Collective wondered if humans might be willing to share their shield technology, while the politicians argued. Military commanders throughout the galaxy were making their own preparations. The Xanthari Empire had recalled all of their fleets to defensive positions around their homeworlds. The hegemony was accelerating research into kinetic weapon countermeasures. Smaller civilizations were trying to decide whether they should seek human protection or hide from human attention. On the mining world of Kepler 438b, the local population had been fighting a guerrilla war against Xanthari occupation forces for over 20 years. When news of the human victory reached them, it sparked celebrations in the underground settlements where the resistance fighters lived. If the humans can defeat the Xanthari in open battle, perhaps there is hope for our freedom, said Rebecca Stone, the human engineer who had been helping the resistance fighters upgrade their equipment. She was one of only a few humans living outside Earth's solar system, and she had seen firsthand how the Xanthari treated conquered populations. The resistance leader, a being called Kexmore, who looked like a cross between a cat and a lizard, placed a clawed hand on Rebecca's shoulder. Your people have given us something we had almost lost: hope. Similar scenes were playing out on dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy. Oppressed populations who had given up on freedom were suddenly finding new courage. If humanity could stand up to the established powers, perhaps change was possible after all. Back on the Titan, Captain Hayes was reviewing reports from Earth Command while his ship traveled through hyperspace toward Council Station. The messages from home were a mixture of excitement and concern. Earth's government was thrilled that humanity had finally gained galactic attention, but they were also worried about the responsibilities that would come with such recognition. "Captain," Jake Morrison said, entering Hayes' ready room, "we're receiving priority transmissions from multiple sources. It seems like every government in the galaxy wants to talk to us." Hayes looked up from his reports. "Any threats?" "None so far, sir. Mostly requests for meetings and trade negotiations, though intelligence reports suggest that several military forces are mobilizing. This was expected. Humanity had upset the balance of power in the galaxy, and it would take time for things to settle into a new pattern. The question was whether that new pattern would include humans as respected members of galactic civilization or as targets for elimination. "Any word from the Xanthari Empire?" "They've gone silent, Captain. All of their ships have withdrawn to their core systems. Our intelligence sources suggest they're having heated debates about how to respond to what happened." Hayes nodded. The Xanthari were proud and aggressive, and having one of their fleets defeated by a single human ship would be a major blow to their reputation. They would need time to decide whether to seek revenge or try to make peace. The Titan continued its journey through hyperspace, carrying with it the hopes and fears of an entire species that was about to take its place among the stars. Council Station was the most impressive structure that humans had ever seen. The massive space station orbited a neutron star, using its incredible gravitational field to generate power for the entire facility. The station was shaped like a giant ring, over 50 kilometers in diameter, with docking bays that could accommodate ships from hundreds of different species. As the Titan approached, Jake Morrison counted over 200 vessels from across the galaxy, all gathered to witness humanity's formal introduction to galactic politics. "Captain, we're being assigned Docking Bay 7, Amy Parker reported from her communications station. "They're requesting that we power down all weapon systems before we dock." Hayes nodded. "Collins, secure all weapons. We're here as diplomats, not conquerors." The docking procedure took over an hour, as the station systems had to be reconfigured to accommodate the Titan's unusual size and design. Most galactic ships were sleek and organic-looking, but the human vessel was all angles and armor plating, looking more like a flying fortress than a starship. Ambassador Carol Turner stood in the shuttle bay, preparing for the most important mission of her career. She had spent 30 years studying alien cultures and languages, preparing for the day when humanity would finally be invited to join the galactic community. She was a small woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had negotiated with the most powerful beings in known space. "Ambassador, the shuttle is ready for departure," announced Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos, who would be serving as Turner's security escort. Turner had insisted on a minimal security detail, knowing that any show of military force might be seen as threatening by the other species. Maria Santos was the perfect choice for this role, as she was highly trained but also skilled at remaining inconspicuous. The shuttle trip to the main council chambers took 20 minutes, during which Turner reviewed her notes one final time. She knew the names and customs of every species represented on the council, and she had prepared responses to every possible question or objection they might raise. The council chamber was a vast circular room with seating for over 1,000 representatives. At the center sat the High Council, made up of the 5 most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. As Turner entered, she could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes upon her, some curious, some hostile, and some filled with fear. "The human delegation will now present their case," announced the council speaker, a being of pure energy that served as a neutral moderator. Turner walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the enormous space. She had practiced this moment 1,000 times, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of standing before the most powerful beings in the galaxy. "Honored counselors," she began, her voice carrying clearly throughout the chamber. "I am Ambassador Carol Turner of the United Earth Government. We come before you not as conquerors, but as potential allies. Humanity seeks only to take its place among the stars and contribute to the peace and prosperity of galactic civilization." High Counselor Thexmore of the Hegemony leaned forward, his massive insectoid form casting a shadow over Turner. "Your ship destroyed 3 Xanthari vessels without provocation. How can we trust a species that resorts to violence so quickly?" Turner had expected this question. "Counselor Thexmore, we used force only after we were attacked and only after we offered our attackers multiple opportunities to withdraw. The Xanthari admiral chose to open fire on a diplomatic vessel. We defended ourselves according to any reasonable interpretation of galactic law." Ambassador Valtar of the Aquilian Union spoke next. "Ambassador Turner, your military technology appears to be based on principles that we do not understand. Are humans willing to share this knowledge with the galactic community?" This was a more difficult question. Earth's military commanders had specifically instructed Turner not to reveal too much about human weapons technology, at least not until formal treaties were in place. "We would be happy to discuss technology sharing as part of broader diplomatic agreements," Turner replied carefully. "Humanity believes in mutual cooperation and the free exchange of ideas." The debate continued for hours, with representatives from dozens of species asking questions about human intentions, capabilities, and culture. Some of the questions were hostile, with several counselors suggesting that humanity was too aggressive to be trusted. Others were more welcoming, particularly from smaller species who saw humans as potential protectors against larger, more aggressive civilizations. During a brief recess, Turner was approached by a delegation from the Merchants Guild, a powerful organization that controlled much of the galaxy's trade. "Ambassador Turner," said Guildmaster Corvex, a being that looked like a cross between an octopus and a tree, "the Guild is very interested in establishing trade relations with humanity. We understand that your people produce certain rare metals that are highly valued in galactic markets." This was true. Earth's asteroid belt contained materials that were uncommon elsewhere in the galaxy, and human mining technology was surprisingly advanced compared to other species. Trade could be a way for humanity to gain influence without relying solely on military power. "The Guild's interest is appreciated," Turner replied diplomatically. "Earth's Trade Commission would certainly be willing to discuss mutually beneficial arrangements." When the session resumed, the real debate began. The question was not whether humanity should be allowed to exist, but whether they should be granted full membership in the Galactic Council. This was a privilege that had only been extended to 53 species in the entire history of galactic civilization. "The humans have proven they can defend themselves," argued Valtar. But can they contribute to galactic peace and prosperity? What do they offer besides military might? Turner seized the opportunity. Counselor Veltar, humanity offers fresh perspectives on old problems. We have technologies and ideas that other species have not considered. Our mining techniques could increase resource extraction efficiency by 30%. Our agricultural methods could help feed populations on marginal worlds. Our medical research has produced treatments for diseases that affect multiple species. This was all true. Human scientists had made remarkable advances in many fields, often approaching problems from angles that other species had never considered. The galaxy's established civilizations had become set in their ways over thousands of years, but humanity's relative youth meant they were still willing to try new approaches. The final vote was closer than anyone had expected. When the results were announced, humanity had been accepted into the Galactic Council by a margin of just 12 votes. It was not the overwhelming welcome that Turner had hoped for, but it was enough. The Galactic Council recognizes the United Earth government as a full member of this body, the council speaker announced. Humanity is granted all rights and responsibilities that come with this membership. Turner felt a surge of emotion as she realized what they had accomplished. After centuries of dreaming about the stars, humanity had finally earned its place among the galactic community. The next few hours were filled with formal ceremonies and diplomatic meetings. Turner signed dozens of documents and shook hands. Claws, tentacles, and other appendages with representatives from across the galaxy. Some were genuinely welcoming, while others made it clear that they would be watching humanity very carefully. As the Titan prepared to return to Earth, Captain Hayes reflected on what they had accomplished. The galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had announced its presence not with words but with actions, and those actions had opened doors that had been closed for generations. Set course for home, he ordered Jake Morrison. The journey back to Earth would take several days, and during that time, the crew of the Titan would have a chance to process what they had experienced. They had witnessed the birth of a new era in human history, an era in which Earth's children would walk among the stars as equals. Behind them, the galaxy watched and waited, wondering what these newcomers would do next. Some feared them, others hoped to benefit from alliance with them, but all now knew that humanity could no longer be ignored. The age of human expansion had begun, and it would be written in the language that the galaxy understood best. Power properly applied with wisdom and restraint